You are. Okay, and we are live.
And we are live. Nice. Okay. I better make sure I remember the link so I can actually check how many people are joining us. Or you can probably tell me as we go, Tim.
I can. We will all see it in the top left corner. So we are already at 30 people.
30 people watching me get confused about how to use YouTube. All right, perfect. Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As we always do, we are going to give ourselves a couple of minutes to get everyone into this, to make sure there's enough that everyone's got in through the door. For those of you who've been with us for a few of these, we do Creative Exchange. We aim to do these every month. Sometimes we do probably more than that. Sometimes we forget to do them for a couple of months because either myself, Tin, or the team are off traveling around the world, dealing with what I call at the moment climbing up a waterfall of work, or challenging ourselves by doing some crazy trip. Some of the people on our team choose to run marathons. Others choose to do ultra races, and that is what we're here for today with Hallvard Kolltveit, who is on our team as our art producer. Before we get going, though, what I would love to do, and I see a few people in the comments already, is just jump in with where people are watching from this afternoon, this morning, whatever time it is. So in the chat, if you could just jump in there with where you are, and we can get ourselves underway in just a couple of minutes. So jump into the chat, let us know where you're watching from. All right, we've already got, here we go. Plymouth, Amsterdam, yes please. Order. Puerto Rico, someone is living life very well. We've got the Riedmar Men of Leisure tuned in. Netherlands, Estonia, Bergen, yes please. Amsterdam, Germany, Isle of Man. Someone's, is that a tax haven? Maybe they're over there just dodging taxes. Good for you. Mexico, Boulder, Ericeira, Barcelona, Stockholm, Leipzig, Helsinki, Ireland, Reunion Island. This is very good. Wow, this is a great crew. Patawawa, Canada, via Switzerland, via Lausanne, both beautiful parts of the world. So please feel free to invite friends, forward the invite around. We're going to spend an hour this afternoon talking to one of the most inspiring people I know, Mr. Hallvard Kolltveit. Tin, you're also inspiring in many things you do, but you haven't inspired me to pick up a bike and cycle across the continent of Europe. But let's get into it. So first of all, thank you everyone for being here. We're going to start with Hallvard. Now, Hallvard is I never know really how to explain what you do. Hallvard is an art producer for DB. He sits in the Oslo office, and every now and then he will send me a holiday request, and the vacation request will be like, I need 3 or 4 weeks because I'm going to go and do some random thing, some very hard-sounding thing. A couple of years ago, it was to go to Lofton to do, I forget the name of the race you did.
Yeah, I think it's called Arctic Triple. They do triathlons and ultra runs, and yeah.
And this year, Hallvard's holiday request was to go and do the transcontinental race, which I was soon to learn meant cycling from Spain across the Baltics. This is the route, and maybe Hallvard, just kicks off, you can tell us a little bit about what the race is, what it encompasses, a little bit about it.
Absolutely. It's, first of all, thank you for having me. It's very nice to be on this side of the Creative Exchange for once. No, I think transcontinental race, I think some who are chiming in, they know it by heart, but it is a unsupported bikepacking race, meaning that it's kind of a ready, set, go. Then you're on your own, no support allowed until you reach the finish line. Some of them you need to draw your own route, transcontinental included. and you can't have any support. You figure out when you want to sleep, where you want to sleep, what you want to eat, when you want to eat, and it's the first man to the finish line. Most of the years it's around 4,000 kilometers. This year they changed up the route a little bit, which meant that most people ended up between 4,600 and 5,000 kilometers, mostly on road across Europe, shown by the nice, very nice Strava post right there.
And so a total distance of nearly 5,000 kilometers. Could you give us an idea of what your first day was? I don't know, Tim, if you have his Strava up on your favorites, but give us an idea of your first day progress on this race.
I mean, I think to put it like in a little bit of perspective and a little bit of background, I think these races are so personal, and the people organizing them, especially on the Transcontinental, they like to do things a little bit harder than the normal race. They're not going to put you out in a headwind and sunny skies and like everything is going to be beautiful. So what they do is that they send you out right before sunset. So you've usually been up since the morning, like organizing stuff, buying the last piece of groceries, being pretty nervous. And then you show up at the start line at, I think we had it at 8 o'clock at night. That means, and what they figured is that the more competitive people will push through the first night, through kind of that graveyard shift, as you call it, without sleeping. So that sets you off in a really nice pace of skipping sleep for 24 or 48 hours, pushing through the days fueled on caffeine and sugar pretty much. So my first day ended up being, I think it was around 24, 25 hours on the bike and 550 kilometers with elevation gain of 8,000 meters, which is a rather big push for a first out of 14 days. But it's also very hard mentally to put yourself like to stop after maybe say 4 or 5 hours and go to sleep, because you're going to bike for 15 hours and you feel fresh and all of that. So first day was definitely the bigger one, but I mean, we were 450 people out there doing the same kind of thing. So you felt a little bit, I don't know, safe and sound, if that's allowed to say in this.
So for everyone watching at home, if you follow Hallvard on Strava, I'm sure, Tim, we can probably link to Hallvard Strava so he gets more followers. It's quite a humbling experience, because the day that Hallvard did his first day, I hadn't been on the bike much this year. So I went out and did a 50-kilometer ride, and I did 800 meters elevation gain. And I came home and I was so proud of myself. I made a little video, posted my little Strava picture. And then when I looked at Hallvard's, I was like, damn, this guy has just done 10 times he's done 10 times the amount of elevation, and he's done 10 times the distance, and he hasn't slept for 24 hours. And I came home like a champion, hands above my head, after 2.5 hours of kind of gentle pedaling. So anyway, so tell us a bit more about this, because if you do this kind of race, as you said, it's unsupported. It's very much, you end up going through the wilds of the world. Yeah. How much of this is cycling and endurance is the key to it, and how much is problem solving?
That's a great question, because leading up to these races, you bike a lot, you train a lot, you do your intervals and your sessions and all of that. And I think a lot of people think that this is kind of a feat of endurance. It definitely is, but there's so much more aspects of it. One thing that kind of shows that is that on these extreme ultra distances, gender and age doesn't really matter. Like, males and females can compete on almost the same level. This race has been won by a woman before. I got torn a new one by guys in their 60s. You would think that, male early 20s would just like go out there and beat everyone. But this comes down to like how you're built up physically and your experience and all of that. So yes, you need to bike a lot and be pretty fit, but there's so many moments along the way where, you know, one of the stories I heard was one person broke their frame and they needed to find a local welder in the town in Macedonia to weld like a part of a beach chair to the frame so they could bike another 1,000 kilometers to the finish line. So, you know, there's one thing about actually just pedaling the bike forward, but you also need to be able to, you know, fix tires, figure out, you know, sleeping schedules, and figure out how many croissants you can shove down your throat in a day. So it's a whole encompassing experience in so many ways.
And you're doing this, as you say, while you try to navigate, while you try to keep making forward progress.
Well, yeah, no, there's one thing there that I want to touch upon, because you're navigating a lot. I know a lot of the other races, you get a file, a GPX file from the race organizers, and you follow it, you know, through the whole scene. But in this race, you kind of draw your own route. Mm-hmm. So you're navigating through these small little towns in France and Spain and Serbia and all of these countries. And, you know, if you've driven in a foreign country before, in a city, that's a challenge in itself. But if you want to go and do it on a bike, you'll second guess every turn you've put down 2 months prior, right? You're going through this French little town and you ask yourself, like, is this main road fastest or is this side road fastest? Do I want to be safe at this point, or do I want to kind of, you know, be on the shoulder on a little bit bigger road? So that's just a huge aspect to this thing of you're going out there into the world and really like exploring these places street by street, which is really beautiful, I think, because you're seeing it in such a different way than just driving or flying or taking the train.
Yeah. And the sort of the community, the people, because my assumption is you don't just get up off the couch and go and do this one summer. Like, you have to train for this, you know, probably progress through different bike races and stuff. So there's probably a very similar mindset across a lot of the people who do this. What's some of the community like around these races, and who are some of the sort of memorable people who you've met along the way?
Oh, there are so many. One thing about the ultra scene, I think ultras, you started mentioning like some people here do marathons, half marathons. I think if you log on Instagram nowadays, everybody's doing an Ironman, everybody's doing a marathon. Like, you see ultras being thrown around. But to me, if you're starting to talk about real ultras, it's not really about the distance. It's not to have that Instagram post to say like, oh, I did an ultra, but it's the mindset, because the people around you in an ultra, you're usually viewing them more as teammates than competitors.
Yeah.
So because you're doing this is a very like self-exploring journey. It's not a race in the sense that you want to finish first or second. I mean, there were 450 people at the start line. Probably a handful of them knew that they were going to compete. The rest of us were just like hanging on for dear life and trying to get to the finish line. And in that sense, when you meet someone on a, you know, foggy morning in Albania, that's a teammate. It's not a competitor. So you're not allowed to bike next to them for so long because you're going to get disqualified. That's one of the rules. But you'll talk to them, and a lot of these talks I remember probably for the rest of my life, like those mornings or evenings with people that you just share 5 minutes with. Yeah. But you know they're going through the same stuff.
Yeah.
I remember one guy, he had we can touch upon like the physical aspects of it, but he had the saddle sore from, I don't know, middle of France throughout all the way to Romania, which means that it hurts a little bit to sit on the saddle, to put it that way.
A little bit.
He was standing a lot of the way, and, you know, we shared a couple of texts after, because being guys, we came to the finish line at the same time, and we cheered in a beer, but you know, you don't go straight into opening up the whole feelings cabinet. But we shared a couple of messages after when we got home, and it's like, that's one of the deeper connections I've had with just a random person in a long time. I spent probably 25 minutes with him over 14 days, but we went through the whole, like the same stuff. I was like trying to give him tips on how to like get over the saddle sore, and he was giving me tips on nutrition. So the people is what makes these journeys so memorable.
And to that point, so there is certain rules on transcontinental, as you say, where you can't ride with others, you'll be disqualified.
Yeah.
The first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about you every day whilst you're doing this is like, are you listening to music? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you going into a very dark place in your mind? Are you, how are you passing the time? Like,
yeah. No, I definitely went into a couple of dark places. I don't want to call them dark places, but there were places that were less sunny, to put it that way. But I mean, I think people that bike understands this. It's different with running, because running, I need a little bit of music, a little bit of podcast. You need but biking is different. You see so much along the way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time I did put on music and podcasts to just like zone out, because you wake up in the morning at 3:30, you've slept 3 hours, because most nights I slept between 3 and 4.5 hours. And you wake up and you know you're going to churn out 400 kilometers of straight Bulgarian roads. So it's those days you need a little bit of music. This is Tuscany at sunset, which is one of those moments where you don't need music. You know, you're rolling gravel hills in Tuscany with beautiful vineyards and such. So a lot of these places didn't find I needed music.
Yeah.
And coming back to the point of like why we do this, it's the big question, like why? And to a certain point, it's to have those emotions when it's tough, and it's nice to actually feel that it's tough, and not having to, like, you know, try to zone out by having blasting music into your ears, but be in the moment. And I made a conscious decision about not posting on Instagram during the race, because it's like one of those things that just takes away a little bit of you know, being in the moment, I think.
For everyone on the YouTube live, drop your questions into the chat. Tin can pull them up. We can throw some questions at Hallvard. No question is too nerdy, by the way. I've been told quite explicitly by Hallvard. So we're allowed to talk fueling, bike tech, bibs, etc. Go as nerdy as you want. Hallvard will answer all the questions. While we wait for those to come in, when we spoke when you came home, the first thing I was thinking in the back of my head is like, okay, where does he want to go next year? Like, is there a certain addictive nature to doing this kind of thing? Like, because my assumption is like chasing a drug or something. You do one thing and then you're like, oh, I wonder what else the next drug's like, and then you end up in a world of trouble, maybe. And you know, is it something similar with this?
That's such a great question, because that's probably the question I get the most when I say that, you know, I've signed up for a new race, or I want to do this thing. Like especially my parents, like they say, when is it gonna end? Is it gonna end? And I also think, like, us coming from, I mean, all three of us, but a lot of the people we work with come from sort of action sports territory, surfing, you know, alpine skiing and such. And I think it's chasing that high, the adrenaline high. And I think the assumption is that ultra endurance is sort of the same stuff, that you're chasing this high, this feeling.
Yeah.
To me, just speaking for myself, I don't feel that now. I'm going out there to experience stuff, to have an adventure. And that adventure now, I'm starting to realize that can be, I really like the ultra space. So like, I would say like a short race would be a 1 or 2 day race. That's a short one for me now. So that's what I'm going to continue doing, 2 3 days. if there's a race that means that I have to be on the bike or run for 14 days to kind of complete that adventure, that's probably what I'm going to do down the line. But it's really important to me that I really want to do this, because the hours you put in and the sacrifices you do along the way to actually just complete this.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, it took me 3 weeks of my vacation time in 2025 just to complete the race. So it's definitely not for me personally, nothing I want to do every year. But, you know, you see all these other races out there that take you across the US or across the Andes or something like that. And it's not in the end so much about the race and the length and the distance, but it's more about the adventure you can have along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. In the meantime, we got a couple of questions in, Hallvard.
Okay.
Tin, you tell me where you want to start on the questions here. You're in charge of the control deck over there.
Yeah, we can start. There are some food questions, so we can go straight into that.
Far away. How many bags of Haribos did you go through? A lot. I think Haribos, for those of you who aren't in endurance sports, Haribos is kind of the go-to, call it endurance food that you eat. It's pretty much just like a gel or a drink mix or something. It's pure sugar. It's so nice. But the other thing is that every single country pretty much have Haribos. So you know how it tastes. It's like McDonald's. Like you go to McDonald's in Taiwan or in US or anywhere, a Big Mac is a Big Mac. It's going to be the same. Haribos is the same. It's always the same. It's the same flavors. It's the same taste. It's the same kind of bag, how you open it, how you eat it. So to answer the question, maybe 30, 40 bags. I don't know. A lot.
Wow. How much weight did you lose? What did you start off at? What did you end at?
I actually don't think I lost any weight. Oh. I'm not sure. It's really hard to say though, because the body starts holding water, so it's hard to say what actually is water and what is just weight. Okay. I'm around 82 to 85 kilos, depending on the day and the fika situation here at the office. But
Me too. I'm circling 82 to 85 most days. Yeah. What's Tin? Next question. There was another one, and there was another couple of good ones.
Yes, I think there is quite a lot about the security, and if you had any problems.
Good one,
great question, especially like on the side of the supermarket where you have to leave your bike on the outside. I tried to bring my bike inside whenever I could, but there were some ladies screaming at me at certain supermarkets along the way. I had a little bike lock with me, so I knew that I would not, people wouldn't steal it just to steal it. If you then steal it, you're bringing a chain cutter or something. I've heard people having stuff stolen, but it's, to be honest, when people see you coming down the street, or if you're parked on the side of the road, you're looking like you've been through some stuff. You're smelly, you're dirty, your bike is dirty, like there's things hanging out. You have a sticky saddle and a sticky handlebar because of all the sugary water you're drinking. So to be honest, I'm not sure that people would go up to you and steal that stuff. You're pretty not nice looking. So maybe that actually put people off a little bit. I like to think that, at least.
There was another question which I had, which actually came in from Lenny Tin, my son. He had a question for you. I think it's in there. Have you got the question there? Oh no, we're going back nerdy.
Yeah, we're going full nerdy.
We'll come back to that one.
Tubes or tubeless? The question means that did I run inner tubes, like butyl tubes that goes into the tire, or did I have like a little gooey substance plugging all the holes? I went tubeless. I rode almost 5,000 kilometers that had one puncture, which is pretty unique. So the technology there, if you're willing to have the sacrifice of setting it up and buying all the gear, it's definitely worth it. But it's a little bit of a hassle to set up. But yeah, one puncture, and then I plugged it with a little plug, and that held for 2,500 kilometers. So But I heard stories. There was one guy who had 12 punctures in 60K. So, you know, you can be, I was at this side of the table and he was like out here and having his, so yeah.
Oh God. Okay, to the question that Lenny asked, what were the scariest experiences?
Stray dogs in the Balkan. Easy answer. I don't know if people have been to the Balkans, but I think a lot of countries, I want to say struggle or suffer, but you know, they're dogs, they're cute. But in the middle of the night, if you're biking through the Balkans in the middle of the night, you'll get chased by some pretty solid packs of dogs. There's a guy who's probably been chased by packs of dogs as well. But, to answer your question, Lenny, like packs of dogs in the Balkans at night, you know, you pass a little house and suddenly there's a big pack of Rottweilers running after you. They say that you should stop, and I know I've stopped a couple of times, and then they kind of chill out. But when you're doing like 30 k's an hour and you kind of fought for that speed, you don't want to stop, so you just keep on going, and it's freaking scary, man. But dogs are cute, so it's kind of a weird situation to be in.
Wow. Okay. If anyone has more questions, keep them coming in. There's one more here while we're doing the nerdy thing. What kind of bike did you ride, and did you need suspension?
Great question. I rode a Canyon Grail, electronic shifting, full carbon, all the good bits. I did not need suspension just because the Transcontinental race is mainly tarmac. I saw people with suspension, and I think it's kind of one of those situations where comfort is so much speed on these things. Like if you're comfortable, that'll give you so much speed. So if you're a person that kind of, you know, you struggle with either that's like numb hands or nerve damages, suspension, bigger tires, you know, more comfort in general, that'll just give you so much speed. But yeah, I was on a gravel bike with road tires. So that kind of the whole setup with the frame and the bigger tires took away a lot of the road abnormalities or what you would call it.
Very cool. Okay, there was a question there. Who's that guy that just joined the call?
Sorry about that.
That is the one and only Chris Burkard. Chris, it's actually worked out really well because we went through Hallvard's epic trip on the Transcontinental race. And as if by magic, you've come in at the right time. We wanted to shift gears anyway. Yeah. So, you know, similarly, whilst Hallvard was finishing out his, you know, I feel like every summer we'll look at your Instagram and you've got some wild trip you're about to do or doing or recovering from. The last few seem to have been like cycling around parts of Iceland. This year, you went off and tackled the Silk Road race. I would love to know the exact name of it. The Silk Road Mountain Race. Here's your Strava stats just to make the rest of us feel inadequate. I was just wondering, Chris, if you could just give us a little bit of what drew you to this race, what this race essentially is, like where it came from, a bit of the backstory on it. Because I'm sure the viewers would be stoked to learn more about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. The Silk Road Mountain Race is something that for many years I had kind of put, you know, up on this pedestal of like, this is beyond me. This is something that I cannot probably do. And it was kind of a bucket list item, like similar to the Tour Divide or something along those lines, because I think unlike a lot of ultra distance cycling races kind of within that space, it requires a lot more mountain skills and it requires a lot more preparation just because you're going to be up at 13,000 feet, you know, above 3,000 meters, 4,000 meters, a lot of the trip, you know, out of 1,200 miles, I would say 80% of it was above 3,000 meters. So you're riding these big, long stretches with like no resupply. You are essentially covering really remote, mega distant areas that, you know, when you're riding into these towns, you're not like riding into a first world obviously you're not in a first world country. You're not riding into a place where there's a hospital or, you know, an Uber or anything like that. It's very remote, and it's very, something that drew me in, I guess is what I'm saying. Something that got me really excited, but I didn't feel like I was capable of that for quite a long time. And so I had aspirations to race the Tour Divide again, but living in Europe and wanting to just kind of knowing that I was closer and that this race would be probably less expensive during this time period of my life when I was living in Iceland, it felt like it made a lot of sense. So I basically poured, 6 months into training and kind of preparing for that and thinking about what I might need to skill wise to kind of make this route feasible. But it's so funny because listening to Hallvard, like it's the polar opposite. You know, you're in the Silk Road. It's borderline, a full-blown mountain bike race, despite the fact that a lot of times you're on double track or you're on, a little bit of tarmac, or you're walking your bike, right? You're usually riding, for the most part, either a hardtail with front suspension or a full suspension bike. But you're very loaded up, top to bottom with basically everything you could need for sub-zero temperatures, to like plus 30 Celsius, right? So like between 90 degrees Fahrenheit and like maybe 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And it was pretty wild. I mean, I could go on. It's such a hard experience to even like put into a bubble because it's so big. It's so big that,
I always feel like you're very humble about your work. I mean, because again, to the question, you're not by trade a endurance athlete, right? You're a professional, you're a creative director. And I mean, you finished, where'd you finish? Podium? What are we talking here?
Yeah, I finished fourth, and I was really grateful because my two good friends that I traveled there with finished second and third. So
Amazing.
It was a cool experience to be able to kind of, for me, the race just ended exactly how I wanted it to. And honestly, it felt in many ways like that time training was extremely valuable. Like the synthesis of being able to be there and feel what it might feel like and kind of be in those environments made it such an easier task, because I will say, like, if I hadn't gone there for those 10 days prior to acclimate and get used to the altitude and get used to the resupplies, because the resupplies are really tough there. The food is super rough. I think I would have felt a lot more lost. But I think if anything, with this experience of ultra racing, you're moving through these landscapes so fast. And honestly, it's a bit disheartening sometimes how quickly you are, because you don't really get to absorb as much as maybe you want. You're oftentimes looking just right ahead of you, and it's hard to really take it in. You're going so fast. So I was grateful to have that time beforehand.
And in terms of taking it in as a photographer, are you, super dumb question here, are you taking a camera with you, or are you just shooting everything on your iPhone as you go?
So typically when I'm racing, no camera. My phone is just kind of the only camera, and I'm using it mainly just to shoot little videos and document sort of what's happening in or around me. It's something significant. But the days prior, when I was just out there touring, I was fully loaded, brought a fly rod, was fishing, brought cameras, the whole deal. And I think that's kind of like that, you really want to enjoy it. Like I've often found that in these environments, if you don't have the pursuit of joy or the experience, it's not going to be fun. And then ultimately you're going to resent the experience. And I really didn't want to resent the experience at all. And
how, so, there's the sheer fact about the amount of days at elevation. How much training did you do before that? And where did you do it? I mean, Iceland there are hills there, but it's not like you're not up in crazy elevations. So what was the training?
The mountains in Kyrgyzstan, they trump just basically anything you've ever seen anywhere. I mean, it honestly it's challenging, because even, having gone to, ridden through Colorado quite a bit, which is at, 10, 12, 13,000 feet, whatever. These mountains are so much, you're not going up like some perfectly graded road where, you can ride, and it's, it's a lot of hike a bike. It's steep. You don't even know if the backside is going to be like washed out. You're walking down a scree field for the next couple of hours. It's nearly impossible to know. So for me, training what did that look like? Over the years, it's looked like different things depending on the type of race. So depending on the type of riding. For Silk Road specifically, I was doing like 2 hours of mostly riding single track a day.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends, I'd oftentimes go and try to do like a 4-hour ride to maybe like a 6-hour ride. I actually really try to take my training volume down, as opposed to like maybe what I've done in the past for more like bigger gravel or road type efforts, because I just wanted to focus on the tech, because it is a fairly technical route, and it is quite technical riding, and you're going to be doing that with limited sleep and a heavy bike. And so I would oftentimes go find the most like heinous hike-a-bike and then like loose kind of scree type descent I could in Iceland, which luckily there's a decent amount of those.
Yeah, a lot of that.
and send it, and that was a good experience. And actually, I think it really paid off because it felt very similar. Yeah. And also too, like kind of needing to be realistic about when it's just worthwhile to walk your bike and when it's not, because it is so easy to like, blow out a sidewall there or a spoke or something like that. And that's the thing that's so challenging, is you don't want to do that way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. For everyone watching on YouTube, feel free to put your questions into the chat for Chris. Love to ask them, so feel free to jump in there. As a fellow parent and a fellow husband who's always trying to do better in his life, relationship, all the rest of it, how do you go about asking your wife you're going to go and spend the best part of your summer doing these kind of adventures? It takes a decent amount of balance, right?
It's absolutely, I've been lucky to be married since I was 21. So I've been at this for a while. My wife and I definitely like communication is a critical part of these situations. And I think it's also kind of, we've realized that it's super critical and needed to actually have that time apart, and not just time apart because of work, but time apart because you want to fulfill some personal aspiration. And that's actually been really beautiful to kind of see that come together. And with Kyrgyzstan, it was a huge commitment of time. It was almost a month. I was there for, I think, 25 days. And I will say, like, that's kind of what it took to really like actually feel prepared for the experience. And then I went straight to China for work for like 15 days after that. So that was brutal. I'm not going to lie. Like, I felt like a bit of a shell of a human after that. My cup was pretty empty in terms of what I could offer others. But I'm grateful I'm home now. And I mean, these experiences, if you don't, if you aren't able to glean some kind of wisdom or some kind of something from it, then to me, it feels a little bit pointless. But I think that's the beauty, is that they often always give you so much more, than they take. So.
Okay, we got a question here from Daz Kush. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Do you do much gym work as part of your training, or is it more?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I would say that like supplementing riding with time in the gym is really crucial. I mean, obviously, one of the things that's really interesting is that mountain biking specifically, it's so much upper body, and so being able to kind of prepare yourself to have some kind of upper body strength. And if you're lifting your bike over one shoulder, which can be wildly uncomfortable, going over like a scree field or going down to a river. We had an 18-mile 30K hike a bike during the Silk Road mountain race, where literally like you didn't ride the bike at all, and you were going over an upper remote canyon, and it started at 10,000 feet and it went up to 13,000 feet of altitude. So that was like a big, all of us knew about it. And I think that really helped. So upper body was huge, kind of like overhead press type stuff, just getting the shoulders ready for basically lifting that. And obviously it's very easy to kind of like just focus on the legs and forget about the upper body. But in a mountain bike race of this magnitude, you're also hunched over so much that I found that doing some core work actually was really helpful, even just back from like ultra road focused days, when you're sitting in the aero position, it's the core that supports that, right? So core work, I find, is really crucial. And if not, it basically, your back suffers immensely, and then your neck suffers immensely, because you're trying to support this body weight on the aero bars or something like that, or hunched over for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day. It's really, really rough. So yeah, that was part of the training for sure.
Another question here from Kieran.
Yeah.
How long between signing up for a big event and start line? And
it depends on how quickly you're willing to commit, right? A lot of these rides, like, it's interesting because some more organized events, there's a period of time when you have to sign up, and so you kind of know, like, okay, I've got 6 months or 3 months. And I will just say this: the Silk Road is the most comprehensive sign up I've ever done in my entire life. Like, because it's organized by a race organizer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the Tour Divide, where there is no organization, you just basically send your name in an email to like an anonymous email address and declare that you're going. And the only reason they do that is because they create a start list, but there's no like definitive, organization or anything, or insurance or whatever. So some of these races are very Western, right? They're very cowboy. And then some of them are very organized. The Silk Road is very organized, but even within that organization, I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere. So it's not like you've got, people watching out for you or rooting for you or anything like that. But the sign up for the Silk Road was super elaborate. Like, they made you walk through all these theoretical situations. What if you're up at altitude and you're soaking wet? What would you do? I've never felt more stressed answering questions. Felt like I was doing some CAPTCHA thing, like I'm proving I'm not a robot, but also like it really did paint a picture of what you might experience. And I really appreciated that. I feel like that was like really awesome. So typically, I think it depends on how early you're willing to commit. A lot of times they build out sort of these windows where you're going to have at least 3 to 6 months beforehand to plan once you've signed up. I had signed up and I had a broken ankle from going to Japan. So I started my training season just on one leg, basically, and I had other rides that I had planned to do, but it definitely got a little derailed and I had to put a lot of training into the very end of that window, that block.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Wow. Tim, there's a couple of other ones there. You throw up the one what do we think here? Okay, we're getting very into the weeds here. How do you manage soaring?
Let's get it.
Here we go. Did you have any?
Oh, like sore ass is what we're wondering. Yeah.
So
basically,
as well, both of you.
Yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts, Hallvard, because you're spending probably more time in the saddle when you're, in the Silk Road, because it's a mountain bike race. You're up and down, and you're floating over something, and then you're descending. And unlike, when I've ridden more ultra distance gravel or road where you're trying to stay planted in the saddle, I use a seat called the Infinity seat, and it was designed by a chiropractor in California for guys and gals that ride RAM. RAM is the race across America. It's like the longest single ultra distance race in the world. So that seat, which is called the Infinity seat, Infinity saddle, I've ridden on all my bikes forever, always. And it has been like the single most important piece of my kit. So I have not had any saddle sores in years, and it's probably because of that.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. And on road, I think if you start getting a little bit of saddle sores, you'll suddenly have a lot of saddle sores because you're in the same position a lot of the time. Yeah. I found I don't really struggle with them either. I think prior to these races, yes, you figure out what saddle that works for you, but you're also at a bike fitter. You're getting your bike set up perfectly. You're figuring out what bib work for you, what kind of chamois cream that you're kind of anti-abrasive, antibacterial cream that works for you. So you're kind of figuring all this stuff out. Yeah. But what I found is that I could figure all this out, but if Albania threw me a curveball and had this, gravel section where I was in my normal position, but suddenly I'm riding a road I'm not used to. So suddenly I'm like in my aero bars for a long time, but I'm being shaken around. Yeah. My body and my setup is not used to that, but I would need to stay there for a long period of time. So suddenly you're like at a weird road that you're not pretty used to, and you start getting a little bit of saddle sores, but you're there for 15 hours a day and you're doing the exact same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
So I wonder if actually the mountain bike part makes it easier. But then again, you're being thrown around, Chris, right? When you're in the saddle, you're hitting potholes and you're hitting rocks all the time. So I guess that in a certain way, they both have their sort of issues.
They have their definitely their ups and downs. One thing too, when you're climbing on a mountain bike, you're kind of like you're working against the suspension. There's kind of this extra like push into the bike to kind of get it, especially when it's steep. You know, oftentimes we refer to it as like you're kind of humping the bike because you're kind of like trying to get into the suspension to get it over some stuff. You don't have that energy return that you do from a more stiff, completely stiff bike. So I think there's pros and cons, but either way, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, nobody wants to sit on a bike after that period of time. You hate the seat, you hate the bike. The seat is like a torture device. So I felt like that was kind of the thing that I felt. I was just like, oh my God, I don't even want to look at this thing. It's brutal.
No, and I think that most races, this is the biggest reason why people scratch. People quit 100%. The race. It's saddle sores. It's actually like, it's not your knees. It's not being able to finish the race in terms of like your muscles or anything. It's just saddle sores.
Would you also say though that Schirmer's neck is another issue that people quit which is basically, it's a failure of the muscles behind your neck because you're holding your chin up so much when you're in the aero position. Because a lot of times it doesn't matter the race, like whether you're doing a mountain bike race or not, there's always flat sections. And so I had aero bars as well. And typically, like you said, you have a bike fit, you're dialed, your body is in the right position to handle this. But if you didn't get a proper bike fit, or if you just threw on a set of aero bars you had at your house or whatever, you're probably going to be in a compromised position. And when these muscles basically fail, it can be really, really brutal because you can't hold your head up. Did you deal with any of that?
No, but I think people just need to Google Schirmer's neck and see the pictures about how people actually solve it in the race, because people have been like, duct taping raw.
Yeah, they tape. They'll like tape their forehead back. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's ridiculous. But I think that's one of, I didn't hear about it on the Transcontinental, but I've heard about it on a lot of different races. And I actually heard a lot about it on Badlands this year, because Badlands is one of those ultra races that is getting very, very popular. So people are jumping into it, maybe without, figuring stuff out prior. So I heard actually people struggle with that there. And if your neck falls down, you don't see the street. And if you are willing to kind of, budge and sketch, get to the finish line, you're done for the race.
Wow.
Yeah, it gets super dangerous. And I think one of the issues that people really want the aero position to be low, super low, over the bike. But in these longer events, typically the reason that you're doing it is for comfort. You want like a hand position change. And yes, it can increase speed, but if it's too low, it's going to put you in more of a stretched out position where you're having to like be way, way stretched out. And so I find that it's like, experience plays a lot in these things and plays a long role. And, there was a great question here where it was like, have you ever given up in one of these ultras, and drawn a line between discomfort and injury? And I just thought there's always a question during the race, like, should I stop? This is terrible. This is not good for the body.
How many times did you ask yourself that question at Silk Road? Like, is this dangerous?
Yeah. I'm like, am I causing permanent damage? When the answer is no, like, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've felt that, but definitely you look for opportunities to say, I want to quit a lot. I think that there's like a couple fundamental things that would make you stop. And outside of like a bike mechanical, like a serious bike mechanical, whether it's a bottom bracket or a hub or whatever, knee pain that doesn't go away. I've had a lot of knee pain on ultras that has cycled through, and it could have just been because of how you were sitting on the saddle or the way you were climbing up this road. So I usually try to give it a day or wait till the surface changes and then see how, as I kind of get back into rhythm, if it goes away. If you crash, that's kind of another thing. If you have like a serious injury that's like, a rib or an elbow or something like that, that can be brutal, but it's not uncommon to like hit the ground and, you know, have a scrape here and there, which is fine. But yeah, I don't think for me, luckily, I haven't had to pull out or DNF or scratch because of that yet.
Okay, I had two quick ones for you, Chris, because we did these with Hallvard. And I think someone put it in the chat as well. What was the highest high, and what was the lowest low / scariest?
I'll answer this physically and literally. So the highest high was, I think, 13,400 feet on the route that I did, which is right around, you know, 4,000 plus meters. Lowest lows were right around 3,000 feet of altitude, so like 1,000 meters, and really hot. The variety of landscape would go from like full blown desert, sweating profusely, to freezing cold way up in the mountains where you're just up there with like shepherds and whatnot. In terms of highest actual highs and lowest lows, I would say that there were these stretches that were super remote where we had no resupply for maybe like 400 kilometers, almost like 250 miles, basically. Big kind of alpine valley up at like 10,500 feet, where you're riding a large distance. And we all kind of knew that was coming because it was just something that we like had read about and thought about and prepared for. But being up there, to me, that was like the biggest, most epic experience of the trip. And I remember pretty vividly, we pulled into a yurt, and a lot of these yurts, like they'll kind of have some offering, you know, chai, tea, or just they'll give you breakfast or whatever it is, and it's you know, the cost is next to nothing. So pulled into this yurt, and we didn't expect there to be any type of resupply, any type of services at all, but it was open, and they were inviting, you know, they invited us in, and we basically had one of the most special experiences mid-race. Something that normally you would never take time for in a race situation was like such a delicacy. I think we were there for 20 minutes, but just having like a warm meal with a warm face and being kind of invited in this otherworldly, harsh environment was something really special. And I think when you've been out and haven't been around people for a very long time and haven't even like spoken at all to anybody, to yourself, it kind of like strikes you how vulnerable you feel and how that kindness feels very palpable, very really beautiful. The worst experience of the lowest low was definitely the last night of the trip. I ended up paying somebody to like stay in their home in this little village, and I got woken up by this woman that I had basically paid to like sleep in one of these like rooms in the house. And I was there with the grandpa and the kids and everything. I got woken up by her husband, basically like shaking me profusely and demanding me to tell them where I'm from and demanding my passport. And I, you know, I'm making the long story short here, but this was a really weird situation because I had just paid this person. I just had the most incredible dinner with them. They made us food. I like took some photos with the family. I was like probably like would have been this most special experience of the whole trip. And I know that going into the very last day of racing, I was pretty thrashed. I mean, when you go to bed, you're like in a deep coma. You know, you feel like you're absolutely wasted. You're drunk almost, you know, you're so tired. And then to be woken up super violently and feeling threatened, like this person's going to either strangle me or kill me, was not super fun. It was not a great way to finish the race. And not, you know, and beyond that, like I've got a blanket, you know, obviously, but I'm like naked. You have a chamois. It's gross. You're trying to air things out, et cetera, et cetera. It's brutal. It was a really brutal experience. And so I basically got kicked out of the house. I was only able to sleep for 40 minutes. And I got kicked out of the house with all my stuff in my hands. And I rode down to some field and like slept in a pile of horse crap. And it was a pretty big bummer, to be honest. Like it wasn't an ideal way to finish the race. So,
okay, I've got a deep question to finish for you both before we get there. What bike you both ride in? Gear did you ride? Etc. Etc. Like Chris, there was also the one for you. Was it tubeless or tube? And then tubeless. What bike frame? So tubeless. And then
the bags and the details. So the nitty gritty. So another just quick story. The week before I got to Kyrgyzstan, I cracked my carbon frame of my of the bike I'd intended to ride. It was a hardtail, a slightly aggressive hardtail model from Ari Bikes in Utah called the Solitude. And it's the same bike I had ridden in the Tour Divide, and I was really excited to ride it in both places. And I'd been training on it for months, but my rear seat stay had cracked. I was just riding some kind of loose kind of descent in Iceland with like volcanic rocks, and something threw up and just cracked it. And I remember thinking, every time I go ride in Iceland, there'd be dirt and mud and everything everywhere.
Yeah.
So washing it off and being like, what is that? What is that little thing? And it was in a circle all the way around. And so last minute, I did two things. I was like, called every single person that I could in Iceland, which is not many people. And I found the only person who works on carbon layup and can basically repair it. So I sent my bike to him, stripped that bike all the way down. And then I looked to get one sent to me from the States. And when that bike arrived from the States, fresh new frame, I was like, finally, this is awesome. It was like 48 hours before I left. It was the wrong bike. It was the wrong model. They had sent me the wrong bike model. And so I was like, oh my God, like the stress was like palpable. And I started looking on like kind of local listings and Craigslist for a new bike for something that I could buy. And because I had a lot of kind of proprietary parts, like with transmission, and I needed UDH and all this stuff, I needed something fairly new that would be compatible. And anyway, I found a Trek Super Caliber from a friend of mine, an ex-racer, who basically sold it to me for a pretty good price. And so that is what I rode on the race. It's a full suspension with like 115 mil in the back, and I ran 120 mil up front. So it's kind of like not really a full suspension bike, but kind of in that mid grade of like those more race applicable gravel bikes. I use tail fin bags, front and rear. I use their Aero Pack, and I basically went from touring where I had some like extra panniers on the sides to just kind of running it stripped down. So rear pack, saddlebag, that kind of just goes, right above the rear tire, and then frame bag, top tube bag. So that bag in the picture, that was when we were touring. That's like their front roll. So I did use that when touring, because I brought like a full tent and everything. And then when racing, just stripped all that down and went as minimal as I possibly could. And I think a big part of it was because of the hike bike, because I knew I had to pull this thing over my shoulder and lift it quite a bit. Yeah.
Nice. And then, okay, let's do this last question. One thing you both learned about yourselves on this trip.
I'll let Hallvard answer that one first, because that one's hard.
Sorry, I know.
Thanks. No, I think what strikes me is that, I saw your adventure, Chris, both prior to racing and the race itself, like the stuff you did prior to the race with Alex, and like that looked amazing. And it struck me because I just finished mine. And I was like, you know what? I think that's the stuff I'm more looking for, because I came down from transcontinental race, and I think a lot of people have these post-race, call it depressions, where you've had the whole life is built up through to this moment, and you're thinking that when you're going to finish this race, get to the finish line, there's going to be like people cheering and everything's going to be beautiful. You figured out the reason of everything you do and the meaning of life on a weird summit in Kyrgyzstan. I felt it was almost the opposite, where I was almost a little bit bored at times on the transcontinental race, because it's so long on tarmac and busy roads, and it's so far in between the beautiful mountain passes and the gravel sections and all of that stuff. I think what I learned about myself is I'm doing this because of the adventure and because I actually like it. It's funny enough, we put us through these crazy lows where you're crying and screaming and you just want to be anywhere else than on a bike. But we do it because we love it. And I saw a video the other day of Lachlan Morton. I think he's a friend of you, Chris, one of the absolute best in the game. And he said in that video that I'm lucky that I have to search out these things in life. these hard things in life. And it's pretty beautiful, because a lot of us, we have this safety net behind us, and we live, you know, you have your daily struggles, but you have sort of a safety behind you. And the place you go to search for hardship are these races. And I hated the fact that I actually was sort of bored in this race. I wanted to experience a little bit more heat, a little bit more cold, a little bit more gravel, a little bit more mountain. If that means that I'm going to be out there for 2 days or 20 days, I don't really care. But I was surprised that I wasn't more competitive in the realm. I kind of put the competitiveness aside after 7 days and said to myself, I'm going to enjoy that little double espresso on the square in Italy with the old gents talking about, you know, the new house on the corner, because that gives me a memory that I can cherish, instead of, you know, finishing 40th or 70th or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice.
That's well said, man. That's well said. I think this is the question that for me is like my favorite and my least favorite, because I've answered it many times, and it's always like such a challenging thing to articulate, not because it's not meaningful, but because it's so hard to it's so hard sometimes for people to really understand that, you know, you don't really enter this space because you know, you want to hurt yourself, or you're some kind of masochist or something like that. It's really not about that. Like I love, more than anything, I love being, you know, having my iced latte in the afternoon, waking up in a warm bed and all those things. But I've found, similar to you, that it's a gift when you get to kind of endure a hardship of your own choosing, right? It's a privilege, very much so. And I found that in my life, it's critical to have experiences that really strip away all the masks and all the superfluous aspects of life that seem so just, you know, not important. And I think that sometimes when you get down to the core of who you are, it requires quite a bit of time and effort. And I think that when you do that, you become a very vulnerable person. You are the most raw version of yourself ever. And, you know, if somebody pokes you, you're going to leak, right? You just feel like, I always tell people that, I'm like, you're highly leakable. Like, tears will flow and all these things. And that's a beautiful place to be in. That's a place of giving yourself permission to be vulnerable and really looking at yourself in sometimes a very hard way. So for me, that is a huge part of it. Like, I feel like the moments of life's greatest clarity come in those experiences. And obviously they even inform when fears arise, that informs something as well. Or when there's some kind of scary experience, like that informs something as well. Like what do you need in your life to feel safe? Because you're willingly thrusting yourself into an unsafe environment in some capacity. And I think what's great about what you said is, like, I cannot remember a single time on any of these races where at a certain point, all the competitiveness just goes out the window. Like, it's just, you're just like, what am I doing? Like you kind of lose a bit of your identity in those experiences because they're so long. And I definitely felt a bit of that. And I really appreciated the self-talk, because there is a lot of that. You know, you're kind of talking yourself through riding through the night. You're talking yourself through the scary mountain pass. You're talking yourself through riding in the snow because there's nobody else there. And I find that in the moment that you start verbally talking to oneself, that's usually like when you're really deep in it, because
I was just about to say, like, when you now say talking, we're actually talking about talking.
Yeah, like out loud, like, Chris, you got this, or like whatever. And sometimes that can look like, you know, you're saying some harsh things, or you're calling out some harsh things. And I love that experience. Like, in retrospect, it looks very crazy, but it feels at very much what's needed, and just kind of a beautiful, beautiful way of, like, I don't know, realizing that it's just you out there. You know, you kind of got to rely upon you, and you know, it's kind of beautiful that in a lot of these races, I'll kind of end here, that there isn't like a crowd at the end. There's nobody to really welcome you in, because you really realize that you're like, it's just about me and having this experience. It's about me and nature and the bike or whatever. And I think that is really beautiful. I kind of love it when it just ends randomly, you know?
Wow. Yeah. And I think Bernie just summed it all up perfectly. riding and exploring on one's bike is such a simple yet special thing. It's hard to put into words. So I think that's a great place to end. Thank you both very, very much for sharing your story. We really appreciate it. It's always very, very good to learn from people such as yourselves what it is to put yourself through an experience like this, what you come back with, how you come back a better person. And I always feel inspired by it, as I'm sure everyone who's been watching does as well. So thank you very much. We're going to be doing another one of these 4 weeks today. We're going to get back into the habit all the way through to Christmas. The next one is going to be with a couple of up-and-coming snow photographers. Tin will send out the details to everyone. And we also have a few live events as well. We're going to be down in Ericeira on the 5th of October. We're going to be there all week, actually. So anyone who's in Portugal, come down. We're going to be at the Point. We're going to be doing something in Vienna, Austria. So spread the word over in Austria. We're going to be going with Icon Pass around a few US universities in October. And so Tin will be sending that details out. You'll keep up to date on the socials and stuff for all of that. So thank you all for being here today. We love to hear from these guys. We love to hear from you guys watching online. Thank you as always, and we'll see you next month. You.